Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Plug in India podcast. I'm Rafiq, and with me is Rishish Sangani, who is the founder of Earth Energy. A few years ago, you might remember Plug in India had visited their factory, and they were doing a lot of R&D work for a lot of different manufacturers, and now they have something of their own. So let me give you a brief about Earth Energy. Earth Energy is a Mumbai-based startup who have unveiled their electric smart scooter and motorcycles very recently, and they have an availability in 40 plus cities as of now, and the response to the electric scooter has been fantastic. So let's chat with Rishi to find out what's happening at Earth Energy, and also at the end of the video the EV community will ask their questions. Well, Rishi, welcome to the channel.
Thank you, Rafi, so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So Rishi, tell us a little bit about Earth Energy. You're a 4-year young EV startup. What were you and your team up to for these past 4 years? I think we visited you 2 years ago, right?
Yeah. I think I do remember you guys visiting 2 years back. Earth Energy essentially is an electric vehicle startup. We are doing electric motorcycles, scooters. Major USP of these vehicles is that they are all completely made in India. Being imported or is not localized is the cells, which there is no scope of localization currently. So I think we are maxed out on our localization fronts when it comes to whatever we can localize or indigenized in terms of the vehicles. Having said that, I think this itself has taken almost around 2.5 years of our time. The last time when you guys visited us 2 years back, I think that was the time when we started doing our localization efforts. The vehicle prototype that you guys test drove during that time when you visited was pretty much semi-localized. So I think we had reached around 60% localization back then. The last 35% of localization that has happened, over the 2 years took the most of our time. But in the meantime, we have kept ourselves busy with OEM technologies and also battery packs and stuff like that for other OEMs. Effectively, also in the three-wheeler space, we have done a lot of work in terms of the communication architecture for the vehicle and also the reliability improvement of the vehicles. Right, majority of our time has gone into testing and development of the essential core technologies at the back of the vehicles that we have done.
So you've basically been developing for others. That's why that gives you a lot of experience in doing something for yourself. You probably know all the mistakes that these guys make, and you're probably going to look to improve on them. So that's definitely a plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we always have believed in the fact that we can do only limited testing. Major testing has to happen on the customers end or on the the OEMs end, where we know the real challenges towards these vehicles, right? Because we treat our vehicles as babies. So the maximum we want to stress them out is to the point where we know it's not going to break. But when it comes to the customers using, it's going to be like we have had vehicles coming back in single suspensions back, stuff like that. It has been great. So I think it's always good to make mistakes on someone, because making mistakes is expensive.
That's where the learning happens, right?
Yeah, a lot of learning happens there.
Rishi, you've got one high-speed electric scooter and 2 electric motorcycles in the market, and you've got 40 cities you've got dealers in. So the first question that everyone has is, when can EV enthusiasts visit your dealers and test ride these vehicles? Then after that, when can they expect delivery? So we've come to that point where people are really eager to see your product.
Yes, I think we have kept our vehicles under wraps for a long time now. The very reason being that we launched on 26th of January, post which we have had tremendous response from dealers, distributors, and also through the networks that we had, right? So I think we took around almost 2 months to figure out if at all we want to go with the online route or not go with the traditional approach, or to take the dealership approach and stuff. What we have decided on is to go with the dealership approach, where we can increase the number of touch points that we have to start out with. I think 40 plus dealerships or cities is basically the touch points that we have created till date. That's not essentially 40 plus cities. The 40 touch points is what we are currently creating and going out with. Now, to answer your question on when they'll start getting the vehicles to test drive, I think that's going to be reserved towards the end of September. We are currently on state approval phases with a lot of different states. So I think we have gotten state approvals for 4 different states, but I think we are going to longer, bigger expanse. So I think we are in the state approvals phase currently on terms of the dealership and distributorships to start out with. They have the vehicles already in their place. They have the vehicles at the dealerships, but the dealerships is per se a place where they are doing the TC certifications. The trade certifications have to be taken place. Also, the RTO approvals have to take place. So the vehicles currently that we have actually supplied them with are basically for the RTO approvals and homologation part, verification parts. The same vehicles will be given out to test drives very soon by the end of September. That's what the plan is. The deliveries will also start immediately after the test drives start. So I think our major deliveries are going to start out with the fact that the pre-orders will be catered to first, and then the the open market is going to start getting the deliveries as well. So I think the open market deliveries should start by 15th of August or by the end of the August. Pre-order deliveries will start by the start of August.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed, Rishi. As we all know, the pandemic demands certain things of us, and there's nothing we can do about it. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. People are really eagerly awaiting. We'd like to know about your status as far as FAME 2 is concerned. Recently announced, and they have a lot more demands. How are your scooters matching up to the requirements of FAME 2?
So apparently the thing has happened is everybody wants to get a FAME 2 subsidy now, every auto OEM. So I think there's a huge line, given the fact that, the homologation without FAME 2 was way cheaper than the FAME 2 homologation. Everybody gotten away with the cheaper ones, and now they want to do the costlier ones. And we are no different. We didn't want to spend a lot of money on getting the ones when the subsidy was not really very lucrative. We got the basic homologations and everything done. Gone for an extension of our approvals, and that's going to take at least a month or two to come out. If FAME 2 happens on a quarterly basis, we can start getting the subsidy starting from the last quarter of 2021, basically. So October ke baad subsidies will start happening. Before October, there's no subsidy for sure.
We're looking at a very happening September, October with the Glide launches.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about the electric scooter Glide Plus. Now, the specifications on this one are fantastic. The body panels, is it aluminum or is it plastic? What is the weight of the scooter? And tell us about the stability at high speeds.
As always, the vehicle has to be lightweight. So the panels have been made by plastics, obviously. There are no metal panels on the vehicle. We have to actually increase the capacity of the battery packs and also to give you better range and performance out of the vehicles. So you would have looked at it, right? The battery pack is really big. So that itself is a very heavy thing that we cannot really get away with currently because there are not very energy dense batteries available currently, right? So you have to do away with whatever is available. So I think that consumes a lot of weight on the vehicles, right? So metal panels was out of a question because just the weight itself would not justify having them on board. Now coming to the fact that what is the weight of the vehicle, the all-up mass of the vehicle is 110 kg. That's like almost 50 kg, heavier than any Chinese scooter available in the market. So there is no question about stability at high speeds because the weight itself decreases the CG to an extent where it makes it more convenient to maneuver at higher speeds, right? Because the stability is increased exponentially. So I think the stability at high speeds is amazing. Also, this is a very I think it's exclusive to Plug-in India, but our 0 to 60 figures currently are in the range of 3.8 seconds to 3.9 seconds. So that's a very, very, very quick scooter.
How much of a challenge is it to localize, say, the plastic molds? The molds for the plastic panels.
That's a very accurate question to ask about localization because the costliest part about any vehicle is the plastic panels because the molds itself cost you into a few so the entire vehicle could cost you around a few crores of mold for sure. So I think localization has been very challenging, but I think we have had a lot of support from our strategic investors who have been very supportive in terms of the tooling cost and in terms of the tooling resources that they have put across to the company. So I think it was very much challenging without the supporters being in place, the right supporters. But with the localization partners that we currently have, it's been a breeze to say the least because the support from the strategic investors has been immense.
This is a good move on your part because what we find in other scooters is that the quality of the body is quite flaky and it's not really up to the mark. So this is something that if you're taking control of, will ensure a really good product.
No, absolutely. So the people who are backing us or supporting us or are advising us come from a very rich automotive background from a long time. So they have actually seen everything and they also know how much to spend on what and what all things can actually be given less importance to. So that's where we have been optimizing our costs and everything. So obviously the cost has been tremendous towards these things, but we are actually optimizing our costs on wherever we can so that the product can be of a better quality and a good rate actually.
We want to know a little bit more about the components inside the vehicles. The battery pack you say is made in-house by Earth Energy itself. It's fairly large. 3.7 kilowatt hours is a nice battery pack size. And with different modes, what do you think is the real world range that can be expected and that you can promise to your customers?
We have gotten this question a lot of times, Rafe. Because what is happening is that we are from the very beginning told it's going to be 100 kilometers per charge.
Okay.
So people are saying, why are you being so pessimistic about the range, right? Because the 3.7 kilowatt battery pack, 2 kilowatt ka motor hai, 2.7 kilowatts, 3 kilowatts peak, whatever the peak range of the motors is. Yeah. So they're like, why have you been so pessimistic? And we are like, ki hum log ko मालूम है क्या range आया है. Yeah, like figures बताएंगे तो simple energy will be being shameful ki like अरे यार क्या बता दिया like that. So we don't want to go and tell you the ARAI figures because they are very, 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 very ambitious figures. And अगर मैं बोलूँगा ना, I'm pretty sure कि I can get the similar publicity as what other OEMs are getting, and also get way more pre-orders than what we have currently got. But
Right.
to be very frank, 100 kilometers ka true range, we call it AccuRange basically. Yeah, AccuRange is what our the algorithm that runs behind the SOC and calculation and
Estimate,
everything
yeah.
is. So AccuRange currently is giving an AccuRange of somewhere around 100 kilometers in the mixed mode riding, or even in the second mode riding. That's what we call. That's what we have always tested our vehicles on. We have never tested our vehicles on the eco mode, because eco mode we always feel is like for you to limp back home. You don't want to use your vehicle much in the eco mode. We have always felt that that's why we also put the speed range on our vehicles very different way, right? So if you're in eco mode, your speed is limited to only around 40 kilometers top speed. But the real testing starts from 40 kilometers to like 70 kilometers के बीच में. And that's what the true range or the accu range is coming to. That's 100 kilometers per charge. So if at all you're riding in the pro mode, the range would go down. But if you're in eco mode, the numbers would at least increase by 3 digits minimum in terms of range.
Fair enough. I think that's an honest answer.
Eco, ride and pro.
Pro,
Eco,
okay,
ride and
pro,
pro.
yeah.
So pro के बाद sports का जरूरत नहीं है, because 85 you can reach very easily 3.8 seconds में in the
Okay.
pro mode. Yeah, 85 is the top. We have actually capped it to 85. We don't have sports mode on the vehicle now.
Okay,
we don't have
so-
sports mode. It's just 3 modes that we have.
3 modes. Okay.
So Rishi, tell us about the cells that you used in the pack. What's the chemistry, NMC or LFP? And then let's go on to talk a little bit about the BMS features.
Yeah, so I think we are using the NMC chemistry currently. There are many reasons to it. Most apt reason or most correct reason, accurate reason for this could be the fact that the most stable chemistry in the market currently is NMC. Because if you look at the history of NMC cells in China, right, or any other place where it is being made currently, it has been made for the longest period of time. So I think it has almost been in production for the last 12 years. So if somebody is promising you that the cell is rated at some, let's suppose 2.9 AH or 3 AH, whatever it is, you get that true range, capacity of the battery pack, because there has been very reliable, and there's not much of cost competition in that. Now, if you look at LFP batteries, LFP ka problem वही है कि they were inherently made for solar batteries early on, and now they started being using in low speed or very low application EV batteries. So for us, it was anyways not going to be very much useful at this point of time to use LFP batteries. Second reason also that there are no reliable very suppliers for LFP currently in the market, because it's relatively a very new chemistry that has come in the market. So when a new chemistry comes in, it takes a lot of time to mature, and also the supply chain to develop properly. So we wanted to make sure that we are depending on the cells that has been in the market for a long time and can give us reliable results over a period of usage and stuff. So that's why it's all NMC. The
Alright.
BMS features, to give you an example, it's pretty standard. The reason being that we have not tried and made our BMS smart, but we have had an extra layer of hardware on top of our BMS. So we have a power management system on top of the battery management system that looks into the entire this SOC calculations, your state of health calculations, your range calculations. That's where the AccuRange algorithm resides on the PMS basically. So the PMS is the one that is doing all the number crunching and giving you out whatever values you need in terms of parameters of the vehicles, and the SOC, SOH, state of health, your charge cycles, your the amount of charge it can take, and how much the speed of the charging has to be. So all of these things are controlled via the PMS on top of the BMS. So I think the BMS is pretty standard. It has all the standard features like over voltage protection, over current protection, under voltage, under current. The over current protection, and all your standard short circuit protections, and all those things are there. Yeah.
You've told us that NMC chemistry gives you very accurate SOC calculations. Now let's talk about the kilometer estimation, your AccuRange algorithm.
I think the time when you guys visited us 2 years back, right? That's when we were developing the very first codes of this algorithm, right? And the
Right.
range estimation or the accuracy that we got was very bad. So for every every 50 kilometers we rode, I think the accuracy was drifted by at least around 20 kilometers or so. So it was very bad when we started out, right? Now when we are ending the entire point and we are closing out our releases and everything, the vehicles that have gone out, everything is there. That's almost the 4.5 version of the AccuRange now that is going out. Does an accuracy of around 1.2 kilometers for every 50 kilometers driven. So I think on the entire battery pack that you use completely from full charge to zero, the accuracy is going to be plus minus 2 kilometers currently.
Input.
I think it's immensely accurate currently, because if you look at that, how the bigger players are getting away with it, or the cars are getting away with it, that is that the DOD, they play around with the DOD, that's the depth of discharge. But in our case, we are not playing around with the DoD. DoD is going to be as stable as it is ever going to be. It's not going to go up and down or anything like that. SOC calculation algorithm is so intelligent and so being refined that with whatever DoD we set at the very beginning at DoD, it's going to still give you very accurate range. I think, it's very important to have a constant DoD, but have a very accurate SOC calculation is very difficult to achieve over a period of time.
Whether you're climbing a slope or you're coming down a slope or you're
Yeah,
trying to rev very fast, these kind of things,
absolutely.
SOC is something that will always get you through. So Rishi, now that we've got accurate SOC and kilometer calculation based on the algorithm, does the DTE, the distance to empty, or the total distance that the vehicle will travel change based on the user's inputs, the way he's driving? So one day you might have a certain amount of kilometers, say 100 kilometers, and the next day, because he's really driving fast, he'll have 90 kilometers when he starts from a full charge.
So, to answer the question honestly, here I think yes, it's going to definitely be deviating a little bit. The reason being, what we are doing is our algorithms actually does a sampling on a amount of kilometers you travel every day, and there's different algorithms that run over it. So, to give you a very frank answer, yes, it will depend upon your previous day's performance, how you have driven the vehicle, and the DTE may change to start out with. The reason being that. It's not going to be you're going to be driving on highways every day and going to be doing your city runs every day, right? But to give an assurance, after you have driven for a set amount of kilometers on the next day, the DTs will become very accurate again to give you the proper estimation basically. So again, at the end of the day, even if you have the DT is showing you whatever kilometers on the vehicle, it's going to self correct itself after a very short amount of time you drive it, and post is going to start giving you the very accurate range again, and again the estimation of plus minus 2 kilometers is going to be there. Yes.
That sounds good, Rishi. So basically, it's learning and it's got a history, so it's going to pick up, get better and better.
Yeah.
So something that always comes up, many of our EV enthusiasts asks us, what happens when there's very low SOC? Does it change the behavior of the vehicle?
So yeah, there are a few things that happen. The first thing that if it is running in a very low SOC mode, right? So we have like two or three different times, or the duration of the time when you drive the vehicle. We have different set levels on the battery packs that come into picture, right? So if at all the vehicle is under a set amount of SOC, the vehicle goes into an eco mode by default, where you cannot switch it to pro mode after that. You can go into ride modes whenever you need to, but it switches to eco mode right away. So the pro mode is locked after a particular SOC. That's what the first thing happens. Second thing is also that the performance of the vehicle doesn't degrade heavily, but you would definitely start feeling a lag in terms of the 0 to 60 time, because the 0 to 60 time would increase by at least I think around 1.5 to 2 seconds. So yes, the performance would definitely go down. I would not lie to you. Very straightforward thing that happens with it. So it's not like you can control much on those things. But yes, you can go below 10% SOC. You can go as low as 0, and the vehicle will keep screaming at you that with obviously the visual aids and both the audio aids also, that you have to need to recharge now. And even after you are completely done with your battery pack and you are stranded somewhere, the display would never leave you. So we have this philosophy, and this has happened to a lot of our teammates, that during night time when we were doing testings and everything, we wanted to test it to maximum, right? And there are a lot of patches in where we travel, where we do our testing, where it's completely pitch dark. The panic that sets in after the battery goes dead completely at 0 SOC, and it's completely dark around you. That's a very very anxiety inducing thing that has happened to a lot of people, right? So we wanted to make sure that the vehicle auxiliary systems goes into a emergency mode post the SOC goes down, and that's 0 SOC, and also your display would still be on all the time. So display would give you the dealership, the closest dealership number that they need to contact to get you out of the situation. If at all you are stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and you need to get a battery supplied to you, or you need to get a emergency refill. For that, the display would never go off and would give you the nearest dealer contact details.
Okay, so Rishi, basically, are you saying that you've kept a buffer?
No. So basically, how it works is that we have programmed our control algorithms to never go into deep discharge modes ever. So you are never going to be stressing your battery packs ever. Now, what we are doing here in terms of having the displays running and your auxiliary systems running on a very protected mode, that's to do more with the fact that we are having an auxiliary battery on top of the main battery. That's a very small AH battery pack just to run the very primary loads on the thing. But we actually bifurcated the main battery into one more small battery on the vehicle. It's in the main battery itself. There's no second battery on the vehicle, but it's on the It's a partition of the main battery that we have put across that can be used in terms of emergencies. You cannot travel. The motor will switch off. The power will not go into the systems, but it's just that the emergency functions will still keep running basically.
Okay, so there is a safeguard and it will prevent
Yeah,
deep
but there is no
discharge.
buffer. So those 3.7 kilowatt, there is no buffer per se to
Okay.
give you like hidden range or something like some big OEMs in the cars do. We don't do that.
Right.
We have a true whatever you see you get 3.7 ka you'll get 3.65.
Rishi, tell us a little bit about other BMS features. Like for instance, do you have active balancing that your BMS does? And what if the user does not have good charging habits? Does the Glide take care of it? Like there are some EV manufacturers which ask users to charge full every 3 days, or balance their own battery packs. So what kind of features do you have in that region?
So I think the Glide is smart enough to take care of its own battery health. Having said that, how it works is that if at all you were to charge your battery packs, right? So there are two modes on the normal charging of the battery packs. One is the standard charging. That's not going to that's you don't have no control over the rate at which you charge or how much you can charge and stuff like that. And second is the smart charging, where the battery is going to itself determine whether it has to charge with what amount of C ratings basically. So C ratings is how much amps you're putting it per given amount of time. So I think the battery is smart enough to be able to determine when to and how much to put into the battery packs depending on temperatures, riding habits, and also a lot of different stuff. So yes, if it is standard mode, the charger charge time is going to be 2.5 hours straight. But if at all you go into the smart charging mode and you put it overnight, it's definitely going to be different over a period of time or over a period of your usage as well, because the battery is trying to condition itself. To answer your question, yes, we do have active balancing on the vehicles, and this active balancing is I think state of the art now, because it's different than what other active balancing is currently taking place. So we are I think a little above that in terms of the active balancing algorithms and different the battery condition algorithms. But having said that, the active balancing is a little different from what the standard BMS does basically. Good charging habits, I think it's very straightforward. I think every day you can overnight charge, but the Glide is going to know when to stop charging and when not to stop charging. So it's fine. You can always put your vehicle on charge every day, but it's not going to affect your battery life very heavily.
Okay, so that's great to know. This is something that we've always wanted, that the vehicle should take care of its own technical specifications. Users just charge and use it. So fantastic. All right.
So to give you an idea about it, Rafe, I think we have made a very intelligent electric car in a shape of electric scooter. So you can be rest assured in terms of the tech that comes on tech stack that goes on top of the vehicle, because it's all top in its class for sure.
So Rishi, say let's take a use case where a user doesn't charge up to 100%. He just plugs it in for say half an hour every day, and it goes up to say 80% every day. But for say a couple of months, it doesn't go up to 100% at all. So will active balancing take care of this? How will the cells get balanced in this case?
So yeah, that's the point I mentioned earlier, that our active balancing algorithms are a little better than the other ones that are currently in the market. The reason being that this is obviously like a little proprietary, if I may say, but anyways, I can share it across to you. Is that we don't wait for our 100% SOC to be reached to start balancing, right? As I mentioned, we have a smart charging mode on the vehicle and the standard charging mode. In the smart charging mode is when this thing will kick in by default. If at all you're not charging for 80% or you're not going to 100% all the time, I think the smart charging will kick on its own. For at least I think once a month or so. If at all you're not doing 80% or not going to 100% every day. So at that time, the smart charging will take care of it and again balance the entire systems. But I think that's where I mentioned, right? The smart charging comes into the picture where the balancing takes place during the time when it's charging.
Awesome.
So it will be balanced irrespective of if you go to 100% or not. But it will wait for it to go to 100% for some time. If it doesn't go to 100%, then it will start doing its own magic and still go to balance.
Great. So it will learn from the charging behavior of the user and accordingly adjust and balance itself.
I think it's going to be more towards the fact that we have already trained it to do something, because it's not learning in terms of the charging. No, we don't have adaptive, charging when it comes to, we're not learning from the user experience of the user, charging inputs, because that's just too much to do and it's not really required in a two-wheeler.
So Rishi, does Glide support fast charging, and at what rate? Like how many kilowatts would it be?
The fast charging on the Glide is currently only compatible with our charging stations. If you have seen the CCS2 charging ports, right?
Hmm.
or if you have seen GB by 2 or anything that you can find or get your hands on for fast charging, they are
Right.
so bulky, right? And I think it was to do more with the fact that the vehicle, the batteries can definitely accommodate fast charging, but not at the rates not at the rates at which the kilowatt ratings are rated at for the big chargers. दूसरा चीज कैसा था कि even to have this CCS combo or like GB2 on the vehicle, it would have not made any practical price point sense also to do it, because if you go to the
Yeah.
market and try to buy a CCS2 charger socket itself, it's going to be a little expensive, if you may say that, right?
Yeah, it'll be more expensive
So
than
I
the
think
vehicle itself.
it's
So
very expensive. Yeah, I
yeah.
think the GB by 2 pair, if you go to look at the entire thing, it's going to be at least in double-digit thousands, right? It was not making any sense for us to like inculcate something that's not going to be used every day in day out,
Okay.
because 100 kilometers का range है two wheeler के ऊपर. You can obviously charge overnight, so it didn't have to be like so much of hassle going into it for anyone. So yeah, we didn't do fast charging on that. You can fast charge through our network, but you cannot do it through your the normal fast chargers basically.
And so what does your charger look like? Is it like a minified type 2 like what Ather uses?
No. So what we have done is that we have basically two practical ports on the vehicle. One is the level 1 compliant AC charging, the socket that comes, right? The
Right.
IC60309. So IC60309 is the standard socket on the vehicle that goes out, that you can see in every Mahindra E2 also at the same thing. Also the slow charging vehicles, all of them have the AC level 1 charging. We have an onboard charger, but no, it doesn't look like a type 2 AC charger. It's like a pretty much like a standard charger that we have.
So the IC connector, Rushi, it doesn't have any communication capabilities, right? So it's just a simple charge cable.
Yeah, I think we wanted to minimize the cost of these, peripherals, right? That's why we made the vehicle smarter and, be able to know when it's charging and when it's not charging, right? So I think what we have on the vehicle is a dual state charging protocol where, the AC comes in first. The system checks for the condition of the AC. If at all, your grounding is met, your earthing is met, and also like few other stuffs are being, catered to, only then we'll start charging on the DC side. So what comes as a peripheral feature in terms of ground these ground capabilities to see if all these grounding or not and all those things is already inbuilt on the vehicle basically.
It's great. You actually have an onboard charger. This is very rare to see in scooters. I'm glad you made this decision. Can you tell us why you decided to have an onboard charger as compared to everybody else having an external charger?
I think it had to do more with the point of like keeping the vehicles protected and having a better control over the the way it is being handled and being charged, right? Because what happens if you look at the overall thing is a lot of times you guys have been in the EV ecosystem for a long time, right? अगर कस्टमर का भी कोई fault होता है in terms of the mishandling of the chargers or anything, and if something goes wrong, the company is the one to be blamed, right? कि charger का quality अच्छा नहीं था, या तो all those things come into the picture where there's blame gaming and blame shaming happening all the time. So we didn't want to do that. हम लोग को था कि अगर हम लोग खुद कर सकते हैं, we can control this entire thing very heavily. Why do we have to go and give this liberty to someone else? So onboard chargers go through a different routine when it comes to testing of these by the authorities also. So if at all you have an onboard charger, it's very much it's going to be very reliable, at least 10 times more reliable than the normal off-board charger.
I think we've been really grilling you about charging and chargers, and very interesting to know about all these decisions you made. It's really putting that emphasis on the design features of the scooter. Let's talk a little bit about the drivetrain. Now, you have opted for a mid-drive motor, which is very rare again. Can you educate our listeners about why you chose a mid-drive motor setup?
Two things. First is the localization efforts, and second is the quality of the reliability of it, right? Yeah, I think we had to take a very difficult decision right from the very beginning, because there was no localized hub motors available 2.5 years back. Now that they are available, but still we are like very much comfortable with the mid-drive motors for sure. So I think the mid-drive motor, so the biggest benefit is that if you look at, so we use BLDC and PMSM combination. So if you look at your mid-drive or the hub motor, they have their sensors inbuilt into the PCBs of the rotors or stators, whatever it is, right? So the maintenance of these vehicles, even if something goes wrong or if something is at fault, is very difficult to do, right? And the the motors have to be always sent back to the companies to be warranted or something like that if something goes wrong, even if the smallest thing is going wrong. In case of a hub motor, I think what we are doing currently is that we have a system where we actually have a serviceable part when it comes to these sensor failures. What is happening currently is that the sensors are destined to fail, right? It happens all the time, and it's definitely going to keep happening in the future also. But apne case mein we are doing, we have a system where we can actually warrant the sensors against anything else, and the service turnaround time is also very less. So that is the one thing of using a hub motor. Also, secondly, the power delivery is very linear, right? If you look at the hub motors, the best of the best scooters that are there in the market that are using hub motors currently always are very jerky rides basically. There's no linear power delivery that is there available in the hub motors, because if you have to do that, you have to increase the cost of the controllers to make them mature enough to give you linear power deliveries and all those things. In terms of a mid-drive motor, I think we have been involved with our OEMs to develop something from scratch to a point where even the algorithms in terms of the your acceleration curves and everything has been pretty much customized for us.
Yeah.
So what we got in terms of going from scratch and doing a mid-drive motor came to an advantage when we started approaching these guys saying that okay, we want to do this. Can you guys also help us with a few algorithms that we need to change in the vehicle? And they were more than happy to do it, because there were not much of a crowd they had to cater to back then in 2 years back. So mid-drive motor came with a boon for us because we could customize a lot of things on that. At the same time, also the quality of the mid-drive motor and the serviceability was very much higher than the hub motors basically.
Awesome. I mean, not only is it a design choice, I mean, easy repairability, better performance, but also the timing seemed to be right. So do you use
Yeah.
a two-stage belt reduction like Ather does? And what's the efficiency like? What are the efficiency numbers in, say, watt hours per kilometer in mixed mode driving?
To give you a very frank opinion over here, I think what happens is that you cannot do away with a single drive belt or mid-drive motor, right? Because what happens is that in terms of a hub motor, the power delivery is torquey versus it's balance between torque versus speed, right? Because it's an in-wheel motor, right? You don't have to do much with it. There are always planetary gear drives to rectify those torque and speed demands that is there on the vehicle. But in terms of a mid-drive motor, you have to actually have a dual stage reduction to be able to match the torque versus speed characteristics in a better way, to weigh the odds between what you want to give out more. So it is going to be more torque and less speed, or less speed and more torque. So to balance it out, I think we need to have a mid-drive with a dual stage reduction and stuff like that to balance out the power deliveries and make it linear. That's the major choice we have taken for
Okay, so that's one reason why you have to have a two-stage.
Coming to the point of the kilowatt hours and your watt hour per kilometer in numbers, I think we don't want to disclose it right away.
Okay.
Because I think it's going to be a point where it's going to be way higher or lower than what we tell you currently, because it depends upon what the person rides and who is riding it. I would not want to disclose this number right away, but in mixed riding mode, I think it's going to be pretty much comparable to what Ather is doing, or even a little bit higher or lower than that. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than Ather.
So since we are getting all information out of you, can you tell us what company you're getting your mid-drive motors from? Like Ather gets its motors from Mahle, which is a German company, and so who supplies you your motor, and what's the kind of warranty that you have on it?
Ather didn't say it was taken from Mahle, so I think the company name will come out sooner or later, down the line. So I would not want to comment much on that right away. The warranty on this vehicle, the entire vehicle is 3.5 years plus 2 years extended warranty. If you opt for it, obviously that's going to come at an extra cost. But 3.5 years is the standard warranty on the motors that we are currently giving out.
Probably the motor will last a lot longer. We know motors
yeah.
go on for 7 years, 10 years. So
Yeah, absolutely, because I think there is not much that is going into these things that are happening, right?
So as far as the TFT screen is concerned, what kind of information are we displaying, Rishi, on the screen?
So, as you mentioned in the launch also, that we had some around 280 odd parameters that we could display on the vehicle, right? So there was so much of information coming out of the vehicle, especially given the fact that we have made everything from scratch, right? So if you make from scratch, you have so much of points where you're getting feedbacks from. So we had so much of stuff in place that we could have displayed, but we actually down-tuned that thing to some around 18 parameters that we are displaying currently on different pages. Obviously, so the main screen is going to show you your speed, your distance to empty, that's the range. You will be seeing your SOC, your current consumption in terms of your it'll be a visual representation of how much you are drawing and how much you are regening. So that is going to be there. It's also going to show your odometer and your modes. We also have your onboard navigation on the front screen. So if you have you have your mobile screen pad, it's going to show you information from a mobile screen. That could be your turn button navigation if you're using Google Maps. Your call features, if it's an incoming call, you can see it. Your messages, if you're all the incoming messages that is coming in. You cannot control your music, but you can see what you're listening to. So I think all the features that are coming one way from the mobile phone can be seen through that device on the first screen. The second screen is going to have your trip informations on how much trips you have done and what all things you have been we have been using, and what has been your power ratings and all those things like. So your geeky stuff is going to be on the second screen. The third screen is going to be about the user interface and your preferences, updates on the vehicle. So we are giving onboard. So it's going to be OTA updates, right? Over the air updates is going to be there. Vehicle information, that's going to be your chassis numbers and all those basic stuff on the third screen. Having said that, we can completely customize the screen, from time to time, depending on the
Oh.
OTA updates that we give out. So I think we are waiting for having our A/B testing done on the vehicle, on the riders itself, and see what data we get out of them, and what things are they liking and what is not, what they don't like. So I think it's a matter of time when we realize that what our information is really needed versus what we are showing. So currently the screens is going to be full of information, but maybe we'll be losing some of that stuff over a period of time, I think.
Next thing we'd like to ask you about is the Glide Plus as a connected scooter. Now, there's a big question there of an annual fee. So, would you be charging an annual fee? Basically, this is something that's been quite controversial among Indian EV community, and many people seem to be hating the idea that they have to pay every year. And in some scooter companies, it's quite a large fee. So, what's your take on that?
So we have been very clear from the day one that there is no subscription for the vehicle, right? What ends up happening during subscription point is that we want to have a connected scooter for the entire lifetime, right? So if at all the person is asked to pay a second fee or second annual renewal fee, he starts to think about it like, do I even need to have this feature on my vehicle or not? And when you are from the very day one giving them a connected feeling to it, and your app is showing you so much of stuff, and I recently came across a post that said that the big OEMs are charging second fees and the app connectivity would just go off. I think there is so much of control that the app gives you currently in terms of our vehicle, that we would never want to take it away from you. The feeling of owning a scooter, or a smart scooter, connected scooter, the connectivity feature is very much important, and that cannot be as a extra cost to you. So we are never going to charge you anything extra, ever, in terms of an annual fee. So you can take it from us that there is no extra annual fee ever going to be charged upon you, for sure. Yeah.
That's a breath of fresh air, because we've been wondering why the other EV companies are trying to fleece their customers. It's quite a significant fee that they're charging, like the Chetak, for instance, and even the Tata Nexon. Let's talk about OTA updates. You mentioned that there will be some kind of OTA updates, right? So, what will be done in those updates? Can the drivetrain behavior be changed? Will there be software updates and fixes for various things?
So I think
Yeah.
we are doing OTA updates currently. We're not doing FOTA updates. So FOTA updates is firmware over the air updates. We're not doing that, because that includes a lot of different architecture that have to be there. We have the capability to do it because we have already developed it from scratch. So I think we already have the FOTA capability also in place. But we are currently going ahead with only over the air updates for major your features on the vehicle. So wherever we find there's some issue, we can change it, rectify it over the air.
Rushi, let's talk about the next category of vehicle that you've got, basically electric motorcycles. Now, this is an entirely different demographic. And so, what are your motorcycles like? Are they targeted for city commute, city riders, or do you see your customers taking these for long rides out of town, just touring or going to scenic places around their cities?
So I think to answer the question, the commuter that we have, right, the Evolve Z, that's more targeted towards the urban city rider every day who's commuting to work and doing his daily errands and stuff like that.
Okay.
So the range on this is capped out to 110 kilometers per charge. The charging is faster. I think it will give you 1.7 hours as the full charge time on this vehicle because the onboard charger is bigger. So I think if at all you want, you can even take it for a longer ride because after 110 kilometers of riding, you can actually stop for a lunch break or something, and you can get your battery fully charged in an hour or so. So I think that is a good thing for a longer ride as well. But they're practically made for daily commute. We have a electric motorcycle, that's the cruiser motorcycle, that's for longer commutes. I think that has a 250 kilometers drop range. That's obviously at a cruising speed of 80 kilometers per hour.
Okay, so you got something for each category. You seem to have quite big, giant batteries, 6 and 8 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
What was the design consideration? Because there's only so much space you can have on a motorcycle, right, between two wheels.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you want more range, you need more batteries. So
Yeah, I think what you've cleverly done here is that we have actually shifted to a different form factor of the battery packs that we currently have. The cells that we use currently, we have shifted to a different form factor for these motorcycles. And the source of these are like, Korea and Taiwan is where the cells are coming for these motorcycles. So I think the energy density for these cells are bigger. a little more, and also the cost of the cells are a little costlier. But I think the price point of the motorcycle is also going to be different. So I think we can accommodate that cost into it. And design considerations, I think they were very subtle enough because the load increases, the dynamics of the vehicle differs, right? So the suspensions and other dynamic components have to change a little bit. So I think it has been pretty straightforward.
So basically, 250 kilometers, quite a good range. I think you can do a Mumbai Pune, you can climb ghats, and if you want to go
Yeah.
longer, there's always the option of quick charging, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
These motorcycles can go to a quick charge station. Is there going to be some provision that they can fast charge, maybe have cooling in the battery so they can charge faster?
Yes. So the motorcycles come with forced cooling. So
Oh, that's mind blowing. That totally changes
yeah,
the category altogether. It puts it in
yeah.
the category of a cruiser. So, Rushi, for the onboard chargers for these motorcycles, of course, they're going to have onboard chargers just like the scooter. And what kind of capacity or charge capacity? Is it going to be a 3 kilowatt charger or something more?
So the scooters that are going to come out are going to be 3.3 kilowatt standard onboard charging. The motorcycles will be 7.4 kilowatt standard, and also it can support fast charging through your traditional 30 kilowatt charging stations as well. The fast charging ones for the DC fast charging stations.
This is going to be a CCS2 capable charger, right, Rushi?
Yes, it's going to be CCS capable to compliant chargers. So yes, you can go to any CCS charging station and charge the vehicle. Yes.
That's going to be great because we are seeing a lot of those coming up on the highways in between cities. So it sounds like it's going to be
Yeah.
plug and play, no special standard required for motorcycles. That'll be great.
Absolutely. Your vehicle does the handshaking for you and you can start charging. Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So the big question is, where will you make these vehicles? Where is your factory located?
So we are setting up a plant in the outskirts of Mumbai, very close to the the Gujarat border very soon. So I think the vehicles will start producing from these factories as early as August next month.
You guys are an amazing startup. We are really impressed with the work that you and your team have done, and always focusing on R&D pays off in the end. So we have many potential Earth Energy customers on the Plug in India channel as well, and a lot of the EV community ask us many questions about you. Like, where has the company been for the last 4 or 5 years? Will you continue to support them? Will this company last? That's what they've been asking us. And
Yeah.
what would you say to reassure them? What would your answer be?
I think we are here for the longer game. We are not here to do the Chinese business and just wind up your business and go off tomorrow. Because we have invested 4 years into it, we want to be here for 40 more years minimum. So I think it's pretty straightforward that putting in so much of efforts behind it. It's our babies that you guys will be using. Very much thankful to all the community members who are interested in Earth Energy vehicles. And I think many of you guys have also pre-ordered the vehicles already. So thank you so much for that support. They'll be at your doorsteps very soon, I think.
The last question is, what will your milestones be for this year and the end of this financial year 21 or 22 rather?
So at the end of 22, I think we are projecting somewhere around the sales of somewhere around 6,000, 7,000 vehicles on road. That's what our current projections are looking at. And looking at the demand that we currently have, I think it's very much reachable for us. So I think that's what we are currently targeting. So yes, you'll be seeing Earth Energy vehicles next to you when you're sending us a signal very soon.
Okay, Rishi, that brings us to the end of our question and answer session. We have some community questions. So we'd like to do this, if it's okay with you, as a rapid fire. So here's Swapnil from Mumbai. He says, what is 0 to 40 kilometer speed of the Glide Plus?
0 to 60 is 3.9. So I think it's definitely going to be less than that. So yeah.
Okay. Then we've got Amit Mishra from Lucknow. Say after 3 years and 36,000 kilometer riding, how many kilometer degradation in range can we expect? Tell us the Glide's battery testing, also current battery replacement cost.
3 years, you will not even notice that the range has gone down because the algorithms will actually show your true range. I think the range will start degrading onwards from the fourth to fifth year. So I think you won't be seeing very drastic degradation in the terms of range. Yeah, you can expect somewhere around 10 kilometers degradation over 3 years, I think.
We've got Riley Pratik from Mysuru on the Telegram group. He says, when will you list your dealers on your website? I want to visit your dealer for a test ride and maybe I'm booking in Bengaluru or Mysuru. When can I do that? Very eager guy.
Actually, frankly, we already have so much of stuff done in the in Bangalore and Karnataka region that actually you can actually start test riding the vehicles earlier than other guys. So I think by September first week, I think you can start doing that very soon.
We've got Sudhir from our Telegram group. He says, can the vehicle seat only two people like the e-Pluto or like the Ola scooter? Or can it fit two proper adults like a child like Ather or Honda Activa? Okay, he wants to know how much he can overload.
Very simple. We have made this vehicle keeping in mind India, not Netherlands or China. So don't worry, our vehicles can definitely seat two proper adults very easily. Child also, because the seats have been designed to be in perspective of the traditional petrol vehicles. So whatever you can do on a petrol vehicle, you should be able to do it on the EV as well. What we will give you.
Awesome. We've got Pratik Shinde from YouTube. He says, we have no idea if Earth Energy has a showroom in my city yet. They are accepting online bookings. What if my city does not have a dealer?
So Pratik, it's very straightforward. If at all you are from any tier 1, tier 2 city, your city will definitely have a dealer or a touch point closer to you. If not, we are very much ready to. So just do a small thing. If at all you have this doubt, just put an email across to the team. If at all we are already there, you will have an option to keep your deposits. If at all not, if you want to if it will be there a little later, you can refund the deposit to you. That's fine.
Mayank Dio from Delhi, what is the production capacity as per documents and plant capacity on the Glide Plus? Do you have CBS?
Yes, the Glide Plus has CBS on it as per the mandatory rules that we need to have.
Right.
Production capacity not to be disclosed yet. So I think you'll be coming to know the entire thing when the Plug India guys visit us. They'll be doing an exclusive of this.
We've got Gotham from a Telegram group. He says, how will the Glide Plus build quality, switches, part quality and panels be compared to say a Chetak or a Pure EV?
Way better than Pure EV for sure. Not sure if it's going to be better than Chetak because we are selling the scooter at half the cost of Chetak. So to be very frank, Glide Plus will have good quality switches that are very much standard with a petrol vehicle because a lot of parts are being shared with traditional petrol cousins of ours. So I think the part quality is going to be very much at par with the petrol quality for sure.
Awesome. Finally, we've got Sudhir from a Telegram group. He says, can we expect cruise control like NIU scooters? This is a must-have feature, especially on highways, as it is very painful to hold the throttle.
Yes, we do have cruise control standard on it. Though we will want to make sure that you are very comfortable with doing the cruise controls. We'll be having it as an OTA update if at all required to get off with your cruise control if you request to do so. But yes, we'll be having cruise control on the vehicle from day one. Yes.
So guys, there you have it. I hope you are satisfied with all the answers that Rishi has provided. Rishi, thanks once again for being with us and giving all these answers.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show. And it was great, telling you guys more about the Earth Energy Glide Plus and how we have been, tackling all the challenges that's coming, our way, so that we can give you great vehicles at great quality and obviously 100% made in India vehicles. That's what our goal is, and we are very much close to it.
Thank you, guys. More questions, please go ahead, write in the comments, and we'll try and get back to you. Thank you and goodbye. See you again next week.